Alright.
Hail, hail, boys and girls. Paradise Preview is back for Season 2, Episode 1. Tonight we're looking ahead to Celtic's final against Inter Milan on the 20th of July. We're also looking back to Celtic's other friendlies so far this season against Ajax and the games in Germany. And joining me is none other than Graham Wilson from Beyond the Waves. Hail, hail, and enjoy the show. It was good to get a few months off, taking a good rest. How does it feel to be back, Graham?
Well, it feels as though I've never left. I really kept myself busy during the close season, but really looking forward to Celtics starting up their season in earnest coming up. Obviously, we have the Champions League qualifier next week against Helsinki. We finally know who we're going to be going up against in this first round of qualifiers for us. But before we get to that, obviously, we have a important tie. An important preseason tie coming up this weekend against Inter Milan. A significant tie, obviously, from the connection with the 1967 European Cup final in which we defeated Inter Milan, the famous Lisbon Lions, and brought the European Cup back to Britain, the first team to ever do just that, first British team, and even first Northern European team. So a lot of significance in this tie coming up this weekend, and I think this is really going to be the consummation of the fitness training that's taken place so far, and unifying that with some of the footballing mentality, getting more of the first team players playing together, and developing that chemistry for that first tie against Helsinki. What are your thoughts going into this tie?
Well, I definitely think this is going to be the biggest test so far. Ajax, obviously they were a very good team, but obviously, we've seen last year in the Dublin Cup, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yep, Dublin Cup. We've seen that they were a good team, and unfortunately made some mistakes at the back and, kind of gave them the win. Pretty sure it was 2-0. I should have done my research though. But there'll definitely be formidable opponents, and as the last friendly, after, admittedly not a very good pre-season for the fans, a few kind of bad results, I think it'll definitely be a little bit of a challenge to, try to put on a good performance and maybe even seek a win.
Yeah, Josh, you just mentioned there the tie against Ajax in Amsterdam this past weekend. I obviously, my feelings were quite obvious from the Beyond the Waves podcast that we did this past Saturday after that game. I just felt as though the team, I wanted to see more cohesion from a footballing standpoint. The fitness tests are pretty much done with. That was the purpose of the German tour, so to speak. And I was expecting quite a bit more in terms of just passing, moving without the ball, a lot of the quick movement. I wanted to see short passes, long passes. We saw none of that. We saw none of the ball. I think that many of our first team players who did play just didn't show up for whatever reason. Now, going into the tie yesterday against Norwich, I was looking for massive improvement, and I feel like we got just that. I definitely saw a lot more possession, a lot more build up, and we did have the chances early on, especially, and we should have found the back of the net, but unfortunately found the woodwork. At this point in the season, I'm not too concerned with that. Again, going back to that Ajax tie, we experimented with three at the back. I don't think we could quite cope with just how high up Ajax was pressing, especially their attackers got involved in trying to get the ball back almost doggedly from pretty much the opposing 18-yard box. I think that we probably are going to see that shelved for the foreseeable future. The three at the back and playing with a more conventional style. Seemed as though against Norwich we fluctuated in between a 4-3-3 or even like a 4-2-3-1 with varying degrees of success. I thought Georgi Samaras and Chris Commons had wonderful games themselves, as well as Filip Twardzik, who I think is really starting to make a name for himself throughout this preseason, and I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever to see him really make an impact on this season upcoming. Who've been some of the standout players for you throughout this preseason so far?
Well, obviously there's been a few that have been played quite a lot, especially Del McGeoch, who's almost played in every single game. He's played a lot of minutes so far. I've not been overly impressed with him, but he's definitely not done bad. He's
very steady.
What was that?
Very steady, yeah.
Yeah. He's not really scored any goals. He's not really had massive amount of clinical passes, but he did have a very good pass against Norwich that I believe was put through to Samaras, who unfortunately didn't take advantage of the chance that Dylan set up for him.
Yeah. No question. I would definitely look for more of that progress there. In the build up, in setting up scoring chances and taking care of the ball, maintaining possession, and letting our forward attacking players do their work. And we're putting our trust in them to do that work, to make themselves available, to make those cutting runs, so that we can penetrate and make some incisive moves to try and put the ball on frame. Getting back to our next opponent, Inter, as you mentioned, I mean, it's been in several years since their Champions League victory, and they've really been on sort of a downtrend since then. Obviously, Jose Mourinho left. They had Rafa Benitez for a time, and they've been just sort of going through that coaching carousel that tends to take place within Serie A. Nonetheless, they still have many of the principles and characters that were so influential in that Champions League run. Obviously, Javier Zanetti, the track there, he has been a fixture with Inter for, going on 20 years almost. You obviously have Esteban Cambiaso, Diego Milito, one of the most clinical strikers in Europe, in my opinion, and of course the Dutchman Wesley Sneijder, who is the quintessential number 10. Not likely to see many first-team players, as this is on the early end of their preseason. This is going to be more of a fitness test for them, but nonetheless, there is quality that's unmatched straight through. Julio Cesar is a player that has left Inter recently to be replaced by Handanovic, who obviously we came up against Udinese last season in the Europa League, so a familiar face there. Lucio has left Inter to go to Juventus, and he's been replaced by former Palermo center half Matteo Silvestri. Walter Samuel, the Wall, as he's known, is still anchoring that defensive central area for Inter. And Felipe Coutinho has returned to Inter from his loan deal this past season against Espanyol. What are you looking for from Celtic's perspective? I mean, what do you want to see from this Celtic side? For me, I want to see much more link up between the midfield and the attack. I want to see a much more dangerous Celtic side, maintaining possession and keeping it tight at the back. Obviously, we saw Kelvin Wilson go down. That's an area that we need to address within the transfer market. What are you hoping to see?
Well, I can't really personally take much from the 3 games in Germany and the game against Ajax. But I did see quite a few positive elements against Norwich, which is kind of a more typical game. We played a more sort of standard formation, and in that game, throughout the game we didn't really have a full starting 11 out. So what I'd like to see against Inter Milan is really us play at the same time more of our starting 11 players. They don't necessarily all have to play the full 90 minutes, but I'd like to see our strongest side for at least 45 minutes against Inter Milan to really give them a good test together. Definitely in the first half against Norwich, we lacked some presence up front, which we have basically lacked in the 3 games of Germany and the one against Ajax as well. Really some kind of presence up front. So hopefully starting 2 players up front, maybe Hooper and Bangura, Hooper Stokes. I'm not sure what combination I'd go with. Another problem that I've kind of seen in the friendlies, mainly against Norwich, was penetration from the wings. Obviously Dylan McGeoch, he isn't really sort of a typical winger. He likes to cut inside, he likes to really keep the ball at his feet and sort of be a wee bit of a playmaker and let the game play around him. And we've not really seen that much of James Forrest so far. I think he has looked quite fit when he has played.
Yeah.
And he usually gives us that penetration on the wing. Against Norwich, Samaras wasn't, he wasn't really penetrating the wing, but he was a threat on the wing. So
yeah.
I like to see our wingers try and get behind the defence a bit more.
And we're going to have room to do that. I mean, going up against Inter, their back four tends to sit a bit deeper, so we're going to have room and we're going to have space to run into. That's why I would like to see Samaras get a start. I mean, obviously we're on the heels of a couple of quality performances from Georgie, as well as that European run that he had a couple of really sparkling performances, especially against Russia. I think that this game suits him quite well tactically. Obviously, being pegged to the left-hand side, I'd like to see Hooper and Stokes develop a partnership up top, see how that develops and flourishes. When we've seen them together this preseason so far, they've tended to do quite well, but we haven't seen much of them both on the pitch at the same time. It's been staggered. So I'd like to see the unification of them two. Georgie Samaras pegged to the left-hand side, and as you mentioned, James Forrest, when he's been on the pitch, I think that he's been quite effective. Over on the right-hand side, give us some width, give us some pace to try and get around the opposing defenders. He's going to be up against Nagatomo, who definitely is no mug. He's a quality left back within the Serie A. Another couple of players to keep an eye on. Obviously, I mentioned Nagatomo. Another player is Del Piero. Now, I'm not talking about Alessandro Del Piero. Inter have signed an up-and-coming development player who I think can certainly play quite a bit of time and quite a bit of impact. It's Iago Del Piero, who in the past has played that trequartista role that's so synonymous in Italy. Now, obviously, with Wesley Sneijder taking that place, it's going to take some doing to take him off of that perch, if you will. And if Sneijder is substituted out, I would see Del Piero being substituted in. But if you do see the name Del Piero, it's definitely a different guy. It's not the one you're thinking of. Any predictions in terms of the result? Like you mentioned, we can't really take too much from the scoreline in these preseason games, but certainly it would be fantastic to build a bit of confidence and make a resounding statement going into this European qualifier against Helsinki on Wednesday. What are your expectations from a scoreline perspective?
Well, Celtic are ahead of Inter Milan in terms of fitness because Inter Milan, their season doesn't start till quite late. I think if we have a good game, we finish our chances and we're tight at the back, we take the game seriously, don't really concede any silly goals. I think we can maybe get a 2-1 if we're lucky.
I was just thinking the same thing. Maybe just nick a cheeky wee goal by Chris Commons late on and get the 2-1 result. I think that would be absolutely ideal. Going up against a quality side such as Inter, obviously, in spite of the fact that they're probably not going to play their starting 11 with it being so early in their preseason, but nonetheless, there is quality there throughout. And to get that sort of result, I think would fill us with confidence and get us in the right mindset, a confident mindset going into this tie against Helsinki. So, fingers crossed that we can maintain our fitness. Like I mentioned, Calvin Wilson's gone down with some shin splints. Hopefully we can address that position because we are quite light in terms of depth. So I have full confidence in Charlie Mulgrew and Thomas Rania, but just hoping that they can maintain their fitness and we can build a head of steam going into Wednesday.
Yep, definitely. Also, another player that will be coming up against that we've played before is Samir
Handanovic.
Handanovic, yeah, that's it. As we know from the Europa League games, he was a very good goalkeeper in goal. So hopefully this time we can get the better of him.
Yep, no question about
it. Also on Monday we will be looking ahead to Celtic's game against Helsinki. It will definitely be a big game for Celtic. The home leg. Helsinki will be a very tough side. Obviously they're ahead of us in terms of fitness and match sharpness because they're already halfway through the league season. Anything you want to say about them, Graham?
Well, I was just going to add to that. I mean, you brought it up right there. They're into the prime of their season, so to speak, so they're going to be fully fit. Neil Lennon made some comments after visiting Iceland to scout them that he has some ideas in terms of how to tactically go about it. So hopefully, the coaching staff can formulate some sort of plan to deal with that. And I'm really looking forward to analyzing and digging into where their strengths and weaknesses will lie so that maybe we can get an idea of how Celtic will go about dismantling this side next week. And obviously with the home tie being the first one, it's very important certainly to get the result, to get the victory, but to maintain a clean sheet is absolutely paramount. So if we can do that, I'm really optimistic going into the second leg. But like you mentioned, Josh, next Monday we'll be coming to you with a full breakdown of the Helsinki game, what to look out for, what to expect from this side, who just put 9 goals up against the Icelandic team that they faced. So they definitely have some firepower, and it's up to us to obviously neutralize that and have everything click into gear. So looking forward to that, Josh.
Good stuff. So that's us for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Hail, hail, and keep the faith.